So in our project, we wanted to assess the trials that led to the FDA approval for the GI cancer drugs in the past 2 decades, taking into consideration multiple factors like the endpoint used, if the approval was accelerated versus regular, the phase upon approval, and the clinical benefit associated with this treatment. And in order to do that, we went to the FDA website, which is a publicly available data, and we assessed the trials from 2006 till 2024. And to do that, to assess the trend and to assess these factors, we divided the timeline in half. So from January 2006 till December 2014 was the earlier period, and from January 2015 till September 2024 was the later period. And when assessing these factors, we saw that there were like 62 approvals, 56 approvals based on 62 trials. And there were more approvals in the later period compared to the earlier one, with around 2/3 of the approvals in the later period. And also, for the endpoints, overall survival was the most commonly used endpoint in the earlier period and in the later period, with approximately 50% of the approvals were based on overall survival in the past 2 decades. Interestingly enough, objective response rate, ORR, was used much more in the later period compared to the first, with none of the trials used objective response rate as an endpoint in the earlier period. And also, there were more accelerated approvals in the later period compared to the first, with around 90% of the accelerated approvals were in the later period. And also, approvals based on phase 2 single-arm studies were all in the later period compared to none in the first. And also to assess the clinical benefit, which is a variable that varies between patients and doctors, we wanted to use an objective tool in order to assess the clinical benefit of the treatment. So we used what's called ESMO-Magnitude of Clinical Benefit score that takes into consideration multiple factors like the absolute benefit, the hazard ratio, the quality of life, and the toxicity. And it's an objective, reproducible, and a systematic tool. And we found that in the earlier period, around 1/5 of the trials achieved ESMO achieved substantial clinical benefit. And the substantial clinical benefit is defined as having a score of 4 to 5. And the higher the score, the more clinical benefit the treatment has. And in the later period, 1/4 of the treatments or 1/4 of the trials had substantial clinical benefit, with an overall with around 1/4 of the trials having substantial clinical benefit. So thank you for the other question. So I think having a balance between the clinical benefit of the treatment and the toxicities that are imposed on the patients regarding this treatment is really beneficial, including the financial toxicities that are imposed on the patients regarding this treatment. So having a perfect balance, we are hoping, would be the best thing that we are hoping and we are aiming for. But we are really hopeful that we are heading in the right direction, and we really want to thank the people who are working day and night to bring these therapies to the market and these trials to be approved by the FDA. Hopefully we are working in the right direction, and potentially with all these approvals being approved by the FDA, hopefully and potentially we will have better treatments and we will increase the survival and the quality of life of the patients.